Hello everybody, it is Anna and welcome back to my booktube channel. Today I am going to be doing the no disclaimers book tag. I was tagged by Sloan Moran, so thank you very much. So let's go ahead and get started with the questions. So the first one is, which trope or tropes in books annoy you the most? I have so many. Lost Princess, I'm Not Like Other Girls, Insta-love, and what is perhaps my least favorite trope of all time, the Byronic hero. What is a Byronic hero, you ask? Imagine if, we lumped Edward Cullen and Jake, is that his name, from Twilight, and literally every other entitled, narcissistic, self-absorbed male love interest from a book ever into one character. That would be a Byronic hero. This was a term that was kind of coined because of a poet, George Gordon Lord Byron, who was a romantic poet in the English Romantic period, and he had this habit of creating these sort of larger-than-life, emotionally brooding and, oh, woe is me, no one has ever felt pain like I have before. Yeah, those were the kind of male characters that he wrote, and he was very proud that he created these male characters in his own image. I can't stand them, which unfortunately means that there's kind of a large amount of romance stories that I miss out on reading because a lot of them rely very heavily on elements of that Byronic hero character creation, and that makes a lot of it just unreadable for me because I find that so unpalatable. I can't stand it. Couldn't stand it in school, can't stand it when I'm reading for pleasure. Number 2 is, what writer or writers do you feel are overrated / overhyped? Okay, I'm trying to do a mixture of young adult and adult authors here. So first, I'm not supposed to say any disclaimers, so J.K. Rowling, I do think that she is overhyped. Now, I love the Harry Potter stories as much as the next person. I feel very personally invested in kind of that Hogwarts fandom and this feeling that the Harry Potter fandom is a place that I can go to feel at home and safe and comforted, but I think that J.K. Rowling as a writer is very overhyped, and I think that especially in light of the way that she's handled things like writing the extended universe material on Twitter and Pottermore, The Cursed Child, the Fantastic Beasts series, the rest of the internet and the fandom is kind of coming around to that same thought where she created something that we all really like and enjoy and we find is a good thing to have in common, but that doesn't, make her God. I think that the rest of the internet is finally figuring that out, and that makes me happy just because it makes me feel like I'm less alone in my, she's okay. Another author that I think is overhyped is Sarah J. Maas. I tried reading her books, but I just don't really get the appeal. Of course, if you love them, that's great. I'm really happy that you like them, but I don't understand the mass appeal of her books, either the Throne of Glass series or the A Court of this and that. I don't know what the official name of that series is. I read a little further into that series, but I got kind of bored and I stopped. I also think that David Foster Wallace is overhyped. He was a sort of philosophical literary fiction writer in the 90s is when he was doing most of his prolific work. I think his work is really good, but there's a certain demographic of straight white dudes that are very much literary hoity-toity snobs in a way that idolize him like he is some type of the second coming of Christ, and I don't understand that. I like his work a lot. I think I like his essays more than I like his fiction, but he's just a man. He was an imperfect human. He had problems and struggles, and sometimes people take his writing and his words as though it's the end-all be-all of everything, and I just don't get it. I really don't. That being said, I do really enjoy his 2 essays, Consider the Lobster and It's a Fun Thing I'll Never Do Again. That one is probably my favorite. It's about this sort of weird experience he had going on a cruise ship, and I had a similar experience of finding it to be a very uncanny, strange, alienating experience. So yeah, go read those if you like that. I think Ernest Hemingway is also totally overrated. I think that as a sort of this man's man writer. He just idolizes a certain type of masculinity that I don't really understand why people are so drawn to that, because it just makes them come across as an asshole. Like I said in the first question, I also really, really, really dislike George Gordon Lord Byron. I've had people try to get me to read other of his works, other of his poems, that I don't get it. I don't get the like whole idolization of the self-aggrandizing man. Okay, so we've been talking about this for a while. Let's wake up my laptop again. Oh, what are your least favorite books you've read since joining BookTube? Well, since I joined BookTube only about, it's not even 3 months ago. It's been less than 3 months. That was the beginning of 2018. There have only been 2 books that I've given less than the 3-star rating, which to me is like the like threshold. So if it's lower than 3 stars, it means I disliked it. One of those was The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning, which was kind of like a how-to practical book about, you know, being less materialistic and tidying your home so that, you know, when you die, it was kind of written more for older people. But the idea is that when you die, your family doesn't have to shift through all of the material crap you've accumulated. Just didn't really jive with it. I thought it was very similar to that Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up book that really just blew up a few years ago, and I didn't feel like I learned anything new from reading the Swedish one, the Swedish version of the Japanese cleaning book. And then the other one that I really disliked was The Glass Spare by Lauren DeStefano. Again, aside from the Byronic hero, it had a lot of my like least favorite bookish tropes in it, and it started out like it was good, but then it fizzled and then just died on me. I did not like the way that book ended. I'll actually link, because I'm now remembering, now that I say this, I'll link the review that I did of that book up above so you can go hear more of my thoughts on that, but I don't want this video to be too long. Okay, number 4, a terrible ending that ruined an otherwise quality book. I feel that way about The Glass Spare, like I said. I also feel that way about the end of Mockingjay because of who dies at the end. I guess just the whole like Prim's death seemed utterly pointless and tragic. Maybe that was the point. Maybe it was just to show that like people die in war and that's just what happens, but that was just really upsetting and unnecessary, I thought. And I really didn't like the epilogue end of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, where you see everybody as like older people going to see their children off to Hogwarts. I didn't like that. I think it should have just cut off and ended. But there's not too many of those. I think I get more irritated by that when I watch a movie or TV adaptation of a book that changes the ending, and then that ending like makes the adaptation really suck. Looking at you, Memoirs of a Geisha movie. Looking at you. Okay, what fictional characters do you wish were not killed off? Well, Fred Weasley, obviously. Again, that was like tragic and unnecessary, and I still cry about that when I see it on freaking Tumblr. In The Heart's Invisible Furies, which is a novel that came out late last year by John Boyne, I did not understand why Cyril's like boyfriend, partner, his partner got killed just senselessly and needlessly. It was already a story that I think walked a really fine line between talking about a lot of the like sadness and pain that gay men went through during that particular time period, but the like knife murdering of the boyfriend just seemed super gratuitous, and it seemed like I was maybe reveling in that a bit too much. Like, oh, look how sad it is to be gay. It's nothing but suffering. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, for this particular character, there was a lot of suffering that happened to him specifically because he was gay. But that particular choice felt extremely unnecessary. And then, of course, I will always be sad that Matthias, my book boyfriend, dies at the end of Crooked Kingdom. R.I.P. my sweet snowman child. Okay. Next question. What are some of your bookish pet peeves? Okay, we've got a few. Excessive footnotes, poorly written time travel, queer baiting, which is when, if you don't know what that is, it's when a character is very strongly hinted that they may be queer, but it's never explicitly stated for the sole purpose of getting queer people to buy in and be the audience to your work. because we're just really desperate for some shred of representation. Don't like that very much. In the same way, using like a character being gay or a character coming out as a plot twist, it's very cheap, and we deserve better than that in books. Changing book designs partway through the series. I hate this. There will be, I'm thinking right now specifically of the Akata Warrior series, like the Akata Witch, Akata Warrior books by Nnedi Okorafor, where there was kind of this beautiful, very simplistic pencil drawing of Sunny, the main character, on the cover of the first book. Then when the second book came out, they completely changed the cover design. So if, for instance, I wanted to like buy all of those books, I had bought the first one with the original design, and then they went and changed it and the books don't match, which is why I'll usually wait until the series has completely come out or it's in like mass market paperback form to actually purchase it, because then you won't have the thing changed, you won't have the design changed on you, but you also, if it's mass market, that's very unlikely to change at any point in the future. That drives me crazy. Okay, what are some books that you feel should have more recognition? It looks like I'm running out of room on this memory card, so we're gonna try and keep this quick. But I have a giant stack here. The Giver by Lois Lowry. I know a lot of people, especially if you're in the United States, you probably read this in middle school. I did not know about this until I was an adult and read it recently. I think it's one of those books that because a lot of people have to read it for school, they miss out on what a wonderful story it is. And just, I don't know, this book like really touched me in a very serious way when I read it for the first time. And especially nowadays with people thinking that like Suzanne Collins invented like young adult dystopia. Yeah, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed reading The Hunger Games, but this was how many years earlier? How many years earlier exactly? 1993. Hunger Games was published in, 2008, and it does it so much better. Such a great book. A book that is great for book lovers that I feel doesn't get enough love or notice is 84 Charing Cross Road by Helene Hanff. This is a novelization of an epistolary friendship between an American woman and a British man who is a bookseller, and they basically have this friendship that is brought about by writing letters in the 1950s and 60s across the Atlantic Ocean back and forth between the two of them. This is such a sweet book. I believe it was made into a movie. It's quite short, and I would definitely recommend this for anybody who is a book lover, because This Inevitable Victorian Thing by E.K. Johnston. I think I've mentioned this at one point, maybe in like my LGBT tag video, this book before. I don't understand why this book doesn't get talked about more, because it's a great representation of queer teens, intersex teens, and possibly polyamory. And it's told in sort of a cyberpunk alternate version of Canada, where the British Empire never fell, but instead rededicated itself to racial and gender equality. And now there's a computer that controls everybody's genetic information. And the whole idea is that knowing that, we're supposed to realize that despite our racial differences and despite other types of differences, we are all the same and we are all deserving of love. This is such a wonderful book. Just go read it. Just read it. Okay, this is an author as well as a book. I have Possession here by A.S. Byatt. I think A.S. Byatt is grossly underappreciated outside of a very specific group of people that read literary fiction, which I get is kind of understandable because her writing is quite dense, but it is very lush. And I think that a great place to start with her, if you've never heard of her, you don't know anything about her, she's a British writer. She, I think, is a little bit better known in Britain than she is here. A great place to start would be with her short stories. I would recommend The Little Black Book of Stories or The Djinn in the Nightingale's Eye. Those are both excellent places to start with Byatt. A hilarious book that no one except myself, it seems, knows about is Three Men in a Boat by Jerome K. Jerome. Let's bring it over here to avoid the glare. This is a story of three guys that decide to go on a boat trip in early 20th century England, and it is freaking hilarious. Okay, next is another one that I'm not really surprised people haven't heard about, and that is The Diary of a Provincial Lady by E.M. Delafield. This is a novel that is told in the style of a diary of an English housewife in the 1950s and 60s. Funny as hell. Read it if you're interested in sort of comedy of manners stories. Next up is The Blue Flower by Penelope Fitzgerald. I believe that I discussed this as well in a video, but it is the story of the German romantic poet Novalis and his love for a young girl named Sophie. And then we have two Anna favorites that you may know of here. Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. Need I say more? I think this is the best Austen book that there is. Well, maybe Emma is the best Austen book that there is, but this is my favorite Austen book that there is. And also my favorite contemporary novel of all time, Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore by Robin Sloan. The cover glows in the dark, and it is about a bookstore that is giant and full of secrets and mysteries. If you are even watching this video, go read this book. I guarantee you I'm matchmaking my audience to my favorite book. You'll trust me, you'll love it. It's gonna be great. Okay, we have 2 minutes before my memory card dies. Okay, what are your thoughts on censorship and banning books? Don't do it? This is kind of a strange question to answer because obviously, like, I don't think that banning books is ever the right way to go. Although, if I were to write a book and get it published, getting my book banned would probably be the best thing that could ever happen to me because, you know, nothing cements your place at the top of a bestseller list like having your book banned for gross indecency and indelicacy. So we can all hope to write something that is so meaningful and true to life that it gets banned somewhere. Censorship, yeah, governments and schools and, you know, people of authority shouldn't censor things. I don't think that putting a trigger warning on a book, however, is the same as censorship. I think that that's just very similar to, you know, like a movie rating. You know, is this movie a G movie or an R movie? You know, you're gonna have different expectations from those types of movies, and maybe, you know, if you're buying something for a child or for somebody that, you know, may be sensitive to a certain topic, I think that is good to be used as a guide, but I don't think people should use that. I don't think people should call that censorship first, but I also don't think that it should be used to be like, this book has a trigger warning for this, therefore we're not putting it in a school library. Like, that's different. Y'all know there's American Library Association ethics committees that can talk about this much more coherently than I can. So I will actually just link you to those because they've done some wonderful writing. And from my days of working in a library and then several bookstores in different parts of the country, maybe I'll do like a whole video on this because actually I'm realizing now I have a lot more experience with that than I thought. Okay. Final question is, who do you tag? I'm going to send you down to the description box. You can check and see if your name is there. I will tag a few people specifically, but if you're watching this and you just like to do this video anyway and you haven't done it already, by all means, please consider yourself tagged. Let me know that you are going to make the video so I can also go watch it because I would really like to see what you all come up with. So thank you all so much for watching this no disclaimers book tag. I think I got all the way through it without apologizing for anything, which is awesome. And I will see you again in the next one. Bye!